Divestment is pulling investment out of any stocks, bonds, or other investments that are unethical or immoral,
and reinvesting in more economically, socially, and environmentally responsible options.
By voting yes on Referendum 1902, we're asking Creighton to divest its endowment from fossil fuel companies that drive the global climate crisis.
But what's an endowment?
An endowment is all of the finances an institution has, which are used for the functionality of the university and for investing to make more money for the university.
Creighton's endowment is around $568 million, and 10.6% of that is invested in fossil fuel companies.
That's over $60 million.
By voting yes on referendum number 1902, we're asking Creighton to divest from the top 200 highest emitting fossil fuel companies by 2025.
That's about 2% of the endowment.
After that, we asked Creighton to divest completely from fossil fuel companies by the time the university achieves its goal of reaching full carbon neutrality in operations.
In other words, if we're not using fossil fuels, we should not invest in fossil fuels.
Creighton should divest from fossil fuels because the investment in fossil fuels poses a constant risk to the school's financial security, as over the long term, the value of our investments in these companies will decrease.
Government regulations on carbon emissions tighten. Fossil fuels become more expensive to extract, and renewables become less expensive. Remaining invested poses a greater and greater threat to Creighton's financial stability.
By divesting from fossil fuels and reinvesting in other sectors, Creighton will have the opportunity to avoid these risks while maximizing returns.
Divesting from fossil fuels and reinvesting in less risky, more ethical industries will ensure Creighton's ability to support students with scholarships from now into the future.
Seattle University, Syracuse University, and Oregon State University, as well as many other institutions, cities, and countries, have already taken a stand and divested. And their examples show that it is possible to divest and that it can be done without sacrificing returns.
Divestment is a proven strategy for creating social change. Divestment in South African companies helped lead to the end of apartheid in South Africa.
Remaining investing at such high percentage in the fossil fuel industry is financially irresponsible, and it's time for Creighton to divest.
Creighton must divest, because according to nature, 1/3 of oil reserves, 50% of gas reserves, and over 80% of coal reserves must remain untapped in order to prevent catastrophic warming. But fossil fuel companies depend on this extraction and the use of these reserves.
Warming of even 1.5 degrees Celsius is correlated with higher levels of poverty, hunger, sea level rise, and more intense natural disasters. And these impacts will disproportionately fall on our poorest and most vulnerable communities throughout the world.
By investing our endowment in fossil fuels, we are investing in an industry whose long-term success is inseparable from the creation of a planet that is inhospitable for human life.
By investing in fossil fuels, we are investing in a scientific, economic, and moral catastrophe.
As Pope Francis said in his most recent season of creation, now is the time to abandon our dependence on fossil fuels and move quickly and decisively towards forms of clean energy and a sustainable and circular economy.
Creighton must divest so we can be men and women born with others by refusing to profit off companies that passively and actively harm the poorest and most vulnerable in our society.
Creighton must divest to be a leader in moving our campus, our community, and our world forward to a better tomorrow.
Creighton must divest to fulfill its mission to work for the betterment of society.
Creighton must divest to promote ecological justice on its campus, within Omaha, and within society at large.
Creighton must divest to show value and respect for all of creation by acting as good stewards of our environment.
Creighton must divest in order to align with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops' socially responsible guidelines, which emphasize the protection of the environment when deciding how funds should be invested. Creighton currently follows all of these guidelines except for the protection of the environment.
Creighton must divest to ensure that our education is funded by the fruits of just investments, not by profits inseparably tied to the suffering of all people impacted by the climate crisis.
Creighton must divest to secure a hospitable planet and a bright future for its students, the youth of today, and generations to come.
Creighton must divest from fossil fuels because we cannot go set the world on fire if it's already burning.